Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and it's great to have Heather here, who's a best-selling author, incredible confidence motivational speaker, has a great podcast as well, and just really an accomplished leader and somebody who's a strong female voice in 2023. So I'm definitely happy to have you here, Heather. Welcome.
Thanks, man. Happy to be here.
Great. So I'd love to just start with early childhood. I know you mentioned that your family has had was struggling financially when you were younger, and you really wanted to pave your own path. Was that something that was like an aspiration when you were young, and what did you think you would wind up doing with your life?
I had no idea. Oftentimes when I believe this is probably the case for most people that grew up poor, you only see the opportunity that's in front of you. So for me, it didn't seem like there was a lot of opportunity. But the one thing that I knew is I started a paper route when I was 9 or 10. And I realized that the harder I'd work, the more money I'd make. So that was sort of, ingrained in me at a young age to work really hard and outwork everybody. And that way I could accumulate some type of income.
Right. And so what were like your first steps? Because your family was in a situation, they may not have had the means necessarily to pay for a higher education. What were kind of like some of the first steps that you took to really get out of that situation and put yourself in a bit of a better position?
Yeah, so I started with the paper route, then I started bussing tables at diners, then I started waitressing, then I started bartending, and ultimately learning sales skills and refining my sales process, from the time I was 9 years old until I graduated from college. And, that really served me very well. After I graduated college, I went to work for the Gallo Winery, got into sales full time, and now when I look back, I'm so grateful for all those jobs that I had when I was younger that really helped set me up for success in sales.
Yeah. And how's like sales differed in terms of like some of the core skills from, the jobs you mentioned there to some of like the more C-suite focused jobs like the one that you had that was focused on radio?
I mean, everyone's in sales, whether you realize that or not. In any exchange, someone's either being sold that you can do something or sold that you can't do something. So for me, those foundational sales skills I learned as a kid were so incredibly valuable. And once I had really refined and improved my sales approach and process, working for the Gallo Winery and then selling air in the radio business, then I started getting into sales leadership, as you mentioned, which is very different than just selling, right? Because now your job is to advance, develop, and lead teams of people. And so that became a new challenge for me in my early 20s. I got into sales leadership and then became an equity partner in my mid 20s. Moved to Saginaw, Michigan, and really learned how to manage people, how to advance people, and then got promoted from there.
Right. And so you focused a lot on teaching confidence to people. And you had seems like you had like a traumatic experience that really helped shape your career that now. How did you shift the mindset and take some of the lessons that happened to you from that experience and really channel it towards other people?
Yeah, so I was fired when I was 43 years old unexpectedly when the CEO I had worked for 14 years, who had promoted me 3 times, became ill and he elevated his daughter to replace him. I was under an 18-month non-compete, which meant I had to leave the industry that I had been in for 25 years and start over as a beginner somewhere. So, right away, I posted online that I had been fired and I needed help. And that post went viral, landed me on the Elvis Duran show. And, a series of different events occurred. And all of them really taught me how to advance and improve my confidence during a really negative time where my mindset wasn't so good. And essentially, what I've done is I wrote a book about the process that I went through so that other people would have the blueprint on how to create confidence within themselves. And then I started speaking about how, teams and individuals can create confidence in their own life. And it really became a business from there.
Yeah. Did you think that that post was gonna blow up in the way that it did, or like, what did you kind of think was gonna happen?
I just was looking for somebody to give me help, right? I just thought if nobody knows I'm available, then I'm going to have less options and less opportunity. I needed to, raise my hand and let people know what my situation was. I never anticipated it would go viral.
Yeah. But it definitely put you on a different career path, and it was kind of like by chance in a sense.
Yeah, no, well, now that I look back, I think it was all serendipitous, but at the time I had no idea. There was no big, plan or strategy around this at all.
Yeah. And so you've traveled around different places speaking, and you focus a lot on confidence and empowerment, etc. How have you, in terms of like, you've had lots of experiences that you've had that have enabled you to essentially provide these great talking points that you do. Like, how do you choose what type of experiences you want to be able to speak about and how to take lessons from them? Like, is it just kind of like you relate to things that you've had in your past and you say, hey, I want to talk about this? Like, how do you figure out your talking points in a sense?
So it depends, it really comes down to every time I speak for an audience, I do pre-calls in advance of the event. So my goal on those pre-calls is to find out what is the goal of the event planner, for that event. Sometimes they'll say, oh, we want people to walk out with three tactical strategies that they can implement in their day-to-day business. It's going to help them drive more revenue. Or sometimes they'll say, I just want people to leave feeling positive and uplifted. Or sometimes they'll say, here's what didn't work in the past, here's what we want to do. So getting really clear on what that person's objective is and what their goals are. And then I reverse engineer my talk around that. So once I have clarity on those goals, I write that down. And then I look at, okay, if I'm going to be teaching on this, and let's say that I'm teaching or I'm giving a keynote for a sales team, and their specific goal is that they want them to drive more revenue and get to the next level that year, then I'll map out what are the specific stories and teachings which are paired together that's going to help the team, achieve that goal.
But what changes in society do you think that need to occur before there's more female C-suite leaders? Like, there's very few female CEOs of top companies currently. Do you think it's just a mindset that young girls don't want to be CEOs, or are there certain things that haven't been provided to them, or what are some things that can change essentially to make that more possible?
Well, number one, women need to be advocates for other women first and foremost, and that often does not happen in corporate America. So, I definitely bring this up. It's the elephant in the room nobody wants to talk about, but women need to actually become champions for one another instead of being the reason that they're held back. As well as men, and making sure that people who have made it to the C-suite are sharing the information. How do you get there?
Right.
What does it actually look like? Is there anything to be afraid of? Because the reality is, people assume that they're not qualified when, the bottom line is you need to raise your hand if you think that you have even, a fraction of the talents or skill set for a job, to say, I can learn the rest, which is what I did. I learned on the job like most people do, right? But
Mhm.
we have to be willing to know that there's people out there that are going to advance us, help us, and support us to get into those roles, as well as at home. We need other men and other women and community helping us to take care of kids or family members. Too often women are forced to choose this or that, right? Like, you're either going to have kids at home and then you need to be at home. You can't work at night and you can't work events and you can't do the things you need to do if you want to make it to the C-suite. So we need other people to help support us.
Have you been much happier leaving the corporate world and doing your own thing than when you were there? Because you did have a good position as a revenue officer at a well-known radio company, but now you're doing your own thing. You have your own platform. Has it been more enjoyable kind of going on your own, leaving the C-suite?
Yeah, I definitely I work for the best boss I've ever worked for myself, right? So I
Right.
love working for myself. However, there is something comfortable about being in an environment and a situation that you're familiar with, right? I had been in that industry for 25 years, so I knew everybody there was to do. Now I'm in a completely new industry and I'm just meeting people, like I'm starting over. So that part's hard. I'm not going to mince words around that, but I would definitely rather be in the situation I'm in now than back in that company. Like I was.
For sure. Yeah, so you have a quote that you can either claim your shame, or your shame will essentially claim you, right? It's a powerful quote, and it's pretty true in a sense. And if I think a lot of people get affected by certain things, and then the shame does claim them. So how do you, when you sense yourself going down a certain path, like what are some of the things that you can right away change about, maybe about your environment or your mindset, that you can put yourself on a better direction just mentally?
First and foremost, think about other times in your life, in your career, where you faced adversity and you were able to overcome it, and then leverage those specific examples as more proof that you're going to be able to overcome whatever situation it is that you're currently facing, right? Journaling is super helpful to understand, oh, when I look back, I realized this is not the first time I felt like this and I was able to get through it. Here's some of the things that worked for me then, right? So for me, it's about like activity, taking action, running, doing things that I love so that I'm able to get through those difficult moments, because they're finite. They're not going to exist forever, right? And it's all about like, how can we weather this storm today? asking for help, raising your hand and reaching out to other people and giving people that opportunity to assist you if they can. Reaching out to the right people and asking for advice. I talk about this all the time. Don't take direction from someone who hasn't been where you're going, right? Like you can't ask your mom for direction, and getting ahead in corporate America if she's been a stay-at-home mother her whole career, or her whole life and her career, right? So be really tactical about who you're reaching out to, who you're getting support from, and then continue to surround yourself with positive people and making sure that you get rid of the negative people in your life.
Yeah, I think that's definitely good advice. It is definitely, you have to have like a mindset shift. You need to change certain actions that you have to be able to put yourself on the right path. And also certain things in your life, like you recognize you weren't happy doing one thing and you need to make a change. And then that puts you in a better position. So definitely great. So you were featured on LinkedIn's top 200 creators at a point. What do you do to come up with like LinkedIn content and how do you like strategize for the most like optimal posts and things to create there that have helped put you in that position to be as one of the globally recognized LinkedIn creators?
The most important thing is being consistent. Such a small percentage of people actually post daily. It's like 90% of the people on LinkedIn don't post.
Hmm.
So you're people assume that it must be so hard to get to that level. No, anybody could if you show up consistently and do it. I've been doing it consistently for 5 years now, right? So just make the commitment that you're going to do it. I have hired a team. So now it's not just me that's creating content. I also have a team that creates content with me. But one of the things that I do is, you want to look at relevant stories. You want to look at news stories, what's trending, like what's relevant to people today. How can you reimagine those posts or those topics through the lens of your experience, your expertise? That's a great way to create content. Another way is to look at other creators and say, what are they creating that's doing well? Look at the data. Data doesn't lie. Which are the posts that are doing really well? And then reimagine those through your experience, your perspective. You don't need to always recreate the wheel. Sometimes you can just reimagine something, in a different way. And then stories sell, right? People like storytelling. So use your personal experiences, bring those to the marketplace through posts so that people get to know you and, create community. Ask them for their advice. I did a post today talking about the top ways to get what you want. And I listed out 6 different ways to get what you want. And then at the end, I say, what tip did I miss or what would you add to this, right? So you want the community engaging with you. You want them offering their feedback and their support.
Yeah. Are you like, do you like fitness? Do you think fitness has enabled you to become success, like part of the success you've had because of fitness, because it's aided to your confidence? Like, are you someone that really believes in that and as well as healthy diet?
Yeah, I definitely am big into working out. It's a big part of who I am, always have been, so for me, playing sports when I was young is a big part of, what helped me advance once I got into leadership is remembering what it was like to be a leader on the field or a leader on the court. So to me, working out is a huge part of my success. It doesn't mean that it needs to be for everybody, but it certainly helps me with my mindset. It helps me stay strong, committed to specific goals, accountability, all the same things that I need to do in business and in life.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. I mean, I'm definitely consistent with the gym. I think it's so important and it puts you in a much better mindset. And it's also like when you start a day with something like that, when you started with something harder, everything else feels like much easier in a sense. So definitely agreed there. Yeah. So, in terms of like you've written two different books, both of which kind of they have a similar theme in a sense, which is a lot of focus on self-empowerment and putting the right people around you. And it seems like that is a big focus because of those experiences that you had. What are some of the ways that you can structure your own environment in the best possible way in terms of the right people? Like, how do you identify who are the right people to have around you that help you be more confident?
We already know the answer to those questions. We just need to be honest with ourselves. Oftentimes, we'll say, oh, I don't want to look at that or I don't want to deal with that because it's going to be hard. It's going to be a difficult conversation. The reality is you need to put yourself first and really protect your peace, your space by saying, if this person's harming me, they're saying negative things about me, they're passive aggressive, they're treating me poorly, I'm chipping away at my own confidence if I don't jump in and handle this. And the more you start showing up in that regard and putting yourself first, the more confident you start becoming, the easier it gets.
Hmm. And right away, like when you left this job at a radio show and you wanted to go and do your own thing, like what were like the first steps you took in terms of figuring out what direction you want to go on? Like you had to think through it, and was it just you kind of saw other people, you thought, hey, this is kind of interesting, I should do my own path like this? Like how did you think about what you were going to do next?
So I put that post up that landed me on the Elvis Duran show. I was halfway through that interview with Elvis Duran, and he said to me, "Obviously, you're writing a book, Heather." And I wasn't, but he was so certain that I was that it spoke a belief into me. I jumped on a plane and I Googled, "How do you write a book?" And it basically said, "You just have to write." And I thought, well, I can do that, right? I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here. I'll just sit down and write. So I started writing. And when I got a lot of content put down, I thought, wow, I need to reach out and hire somebody, invest in myself that's written books before, because I haven't. So I hired an editor, and that individual advanced me so quickly because he'd written 19 books, right? And
Yeah.
so we were able to bring my book to light very, very quickly. And once I had a book, I Googled, how do you sell books? And it said, go on podcasts, speak. And I thought, great, I can do both of those. So I started pitching myself for podcasts. I started pitching myself for speeches. And when I was pitching myself for speeches, that led me to a company finally asking me, well, what's your speaker fee? And I Googled speaker fees and I saw Gary Vaynerchuk was making $350,000 a 60-minute keynote at the time in 2018. And so I thought, wow, this is a lucrative business. I want to get into this. So I really shifted my focus, attention, and my reach outs towards getting hired for speeches. And that's when I decided I wanted to give a TEDx talk because I thought that would help my career. And so, it's like one step just leads to the next. There was never a master plan about any of this. I just figured it out along the way.
Yeah, and having that opportunity to speak, to do the TED Talk, what type of effects did it have on your life after? Like, of course, it was a great appearance and it made you look good, but like, what were some of like the material effects?
Yeah, well, once you have a TEDx talk, first of all, my TEDx talk was promoted to TED and it was translated into 6 languages. So that just gives you more,
Yeah,
further credibility in this arena that while I had spoken for 20 years in corporate America, I had never been labeled a keynote speaker, right? So even though, in my opinion, I've been speaking forever, in
right.
this new arena, they didn't know me as a speaker. So I was starting over as a beginner. Once I got that TEDx talk and it got promoted to TED, it elevated the way that people see me, right? And saw me. And so I marketed that TEDx talk ad nauseum to really, promote myself and leverage and advance my speaking career. And that's how I was able to start getting, higher dollar amounts and higher fees was really as a result of that TEDx talk.
And you've essentially created your own like distribution platform with Instagram and with other social media. When you were starting that initially, like how did you go about that without having a team? Was it just you created content, took posts, and started putting like you kind of did the other posts you mentioned? Did you just kind of take photos of yourself or just photos of quotes and just did it on your own? And
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, listen, the key is to be consistent. Data's not going to lie. So you're going to get feedback from the post and pay attention to what's working. So often people want to say, like, oh, there's some magic bullet there. In my opinion, I haven't found that magic bullet. It's about showing up every day, being that real version of you, adding value where you can, and see what things people are asking for. And when you start delivering those things for them and truly serving others, you'll see, your platform will start elevating and growing as well.
100%. Yeah, agreed. There are some people that kind of do like have some similarities to you, that are kind of within your network that like have like more like focused on like empowerment and a leadership podcast. But I think that you kind of stand out in a sense because you've really had experiences that put you on the complete other end of it, and have built back up from that. So it's a very authentic approach. Do you get reached out to by just people that have had those types of experiences and are trying to go follow in your footsteps? And what are some of the things you tell people like that right away?
Yeah, that's why I actually launched my podcast, Creating Confidence with Heather Monahan. I get so many messages, I wasn't able to respond to them all. So I thought, if there's a need for, because people, I just got fired. What steps should I take? I want to reinvent myself. I want to switch my career. My boss is treating me terribly. How do I handle it? I was getting all these same types of questions based around my career and what I had done. And I realized if I'm going to answer these people, I can't sit at a computer all day long, just responding. Instead, I need to get a megaphone. And so that's what, brought me to launching my podcast so that each week I share, different tips and tactics on how people can get out of these situations, can overcome these challenging times.
Yeah. And looking back at your life, are there certain decisions that you think that, that you made that really were put you in the wrong position? Do you regret certain things or do you look at life like, I did these different decisions. I had this experience, working in radio and didn't turn out maybe the way I wanted to. And, that's that, but I'm happy the way, the direction I am now. Were there like major mistakes you felt like I should have avoided? And if there were, like, what would those have been?
Yeah, I worked side by side with someone who treated me terribly for years, right? And I ignored it. And when I did that, I was eroding my own confidence away and really limiting, my opportunity to succeed and to reach my full potential. So I don't ever beat myself up about it. I just acknowledge that it happened, and I'm crystal clear that that will never happen again. I have no space for people who treat me poorly in my life. And I when I was at that job, every year I was pitching myself to be a board member of the company that I was working for. And I was always given the runaround, always told that, oh yeah, it's coming, it's coming. And when I ended up getting fired, within 2 years, I landed my first board seat. And it just goes to show that you might not be wanted at the table that you're trying to sit at. Well, then open up a door and go to a different table in another room, because there is a table somewhere where people do want you. It doesn't mean you are less valuable. It means the people around you aren't valuing you. And as long as you stay there, you're ultimately not going to value yourself. So it's just been a true gift for me that I was fired from there, because, obviously I found my board seat now that I wanted so badly. I started my speaking career, my books, and helping people, and really started, serving a much bigger purpose in life.
Yeah. And what do you think are some of the next steps for you? Like you've accomplished many things throughout your life. You've probably done a bunch of the things that you wanted to do. Like where do you see yourself going next? Do you want to do more keynote speeches and travel around and do that and release other books? Are there some other avenues that you're looking at? Like this would be interesting to create this or, do that. What are you kind of thinking are the next steps for you, Heather?
Oh my gosh, I'm working on two incredible opportunities that have, not been solidified yet, so I can't announce them, but I'm so, really it's going to be taking my speaking to a completely different level, and, hopefully impacting millions of people. And I'm super excited about it. But one thing I've learned is, when I was in a traditional business, like the radio business, I could look forward a year, 5 years, 10 years, and it was so clear
Yeah.
okay, this is what we're going to be doing then. What I've learned now, as I'm more of a rookie in a new business, a new arena, I still don't know the new people I'm going to meet this afternoon that are in this industry. So doors and opportunities open for me that I didn't even know existed, because I'm still so new at it. So it's impossible for me to predict. This one opportunity that I was just mentioning to you, I had no idea that this was going to fall into my lap. And, it happened as a result of my podcast, and having a guest on my podcast. When you're newer in something, it's very hard to predict, which is incredibly exciting, because when everything's uncertain, that means that really anything is possible for you.
Yeah. And being open-minded, like are there ways that you can recognize that certain opportunities, like that you sense, or certain opportunities are for you right away? Like, how do you kind of filter? Because being open-minded is important, but how do you filter what's for you initially, then and then kind of take those things to the next steps? Like, how do you identify what you think is a good opportunity?
The people, it's more to me about the people I'm working with and making sure they're aligned in regards to their values, the energy that I feel from them, their reputation, what their goals and their plans are. That's the most important thing to me, and then we can build things out from there. But I'm really clear on, it's critical to me that if I'm going to allow somebody to start working with me, or I'm going to partner with them in some way, that they are a solid person with a great reputation, that respect the people that they work with. That's the most important piece of it.
Yeah, that's definitely important. I mean, you have to be working with people that are good people, that are caring, that understand the kind of person that you are. I mean, the people are. It's almost like a marriage in a sense. When you're getting involved with other people and you're gonna be seeing them all the time. So I agree. Definitely, the people isn't super important. Um, yeah, I mean, in terms of like you've accomplished a lot of different things and you've written a couple of different books. Is there more that you want to do in the book space, and what kind of direction would you be going in with that if you wanted to?
Yeah, the new book that I've been working on is called The Secret Art of Skipping the Line. And it's really the strategies that I put forth in business and on life that allowed me to literally skip lines, whether it be from wanting to get into a location that has a line and not, being waiting, like that's not something that I would be interested in. But or to, how did I sign a deal with HarperCollins leadership when other people are, on a wait list trying to get access to it. So really teaching what are those tips and tricks to help people so that they have the opportunity to skip the line as well.
Yeah, well, that's important to understand. I think a lot of this stuff is relationship based too, but it's definitely important to understand like how to be able to get in the right place and position yourself. Because once you get in, it just levels up from there essentially. Yeah, that's good. But I mean, those are pretty much all the questions I had today, Heather. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your life story as well as what you're currently building, what you want to build next. I think there's a lot people can learn from you and from your journey. You really came from all the way in a situation that was unideal to building up your own career and building something on your own that's very unique and it's taking you to a lot of interesting places. So I definitely wish you continued success with that. And thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Ben.